All right. Welcome back to the journey. I'm not going to put a number on it because as we were just discussing, I don't remember which one it is. We think this is episode 7. We'll find out. But I'm joined by Auburn, Lance, and Chase. This is Broxton. Welcome back. We haven't done this in a year.
Are you sharing my full name on here?
Auburn Shepherd.
Auburn Lance.
Auburn Lance Shepherd.
You got to add some more commas, man.
John Lance Griffin and...
Chase and Jeffrey Falls.
Okay.
Easy now.
Okay, well, how's everybody doing? We haven't done this in a while. All of my plans to be way ahead on recording are
shot now.
We're not that far ahead now that we've had a Christmas holiday and everybody was out last week or doing something. So,
yeah, you had the sickness scare last week.
Yep. The flu's been running through our house. I haven't gotten it.
Better knock on some wood.
We can be more timely now than...
I took Zofluza, so I should be good.
How many episodes have officially released now?
4, I think.
And so if this is 7, so we still got a few that...
We're a couple weeks ahead still.
Well, not bad.
But episode 5 will be tomorrow. So...
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking, it's hard to remember what episode was what and what we said when, and people are coming up to you now talking about it. And it's like,
yeah, because thankfully we do have at least a few listeners.
Yeah, we do. Shout out to our listeners.
So, I mean, that's always good. Well, I mean, we should do some kind of recap since we haven't been here. So like what's been going on since we've recorded?
I guess the last episode we recorded would have been before Christmas, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot happened in those.
Yeah, the week before Christmas, huh?
Yeah.
Christmas life, time off for some of us.
I got sideswiped.
Oh no!
The Friday before Christmas, so I don't think who sideswiped me has insurance. So
no.
So my passenger door still crumpled in because we're kind of in limbo with that now until they figure something out there.
I thought you couldn't have a license without insurance.
Yeah, you can't.
You can have a license.
Well, it's illegal.
Car.
Yeah.
It's illegal to drive a car.
But that doesn't mean...
Former insurance agent.
Hey, 3 months. Yeah. That's the worst, though, because then you have to worry about your uninsured motorist and if it even covers it. And man,
so there's a person in that situation that was the driving the car. Or is there no legal,
it was
anything towards them since they're driving illegally?
I don't know the answer to that because the person that was driving before the police arrived showed me an insurance card. But then when the police arrived, the person that was driving showed him a different insurance card, neither one of which may be valid because the insurance company has said they have not been able to find a valid insurance carrier yet. And if they hadn't found one by now, I don't think it's going to happen. So, but I thought you could verify before you actually let the person go. But apparently that's not the case because they just took down the information and...
Yeah, because it shouldn't be too hard to...
And he's from Georgia, the driver.
I mean, if they find every ID card has a number basically in your company. So that's kind of wild.
What's going on outside the door here?
Noise.
I think there's a party.
I think there's some moving in an office being done. Sounds like to me.
Interesting.
We are adding 2 staff members to the team. So
okay, yeah, that's one thing that's happened since we last recorded.
Yeah.
Chase, has your responsibility. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I guess it was really a quick process. Basically the month of December kind of started running with the direction with Chuck and myself to do some initial interviews and had the conversations to try to hire a preschool director, and then ended up out of that hiring 2, a preschool director and now a senior adult ministry director.
And they are?
Preschool directors, Jennifer Warren. Excited to have Jennifer on our team. She has a great background in that preschool age of life and ministry in different ways. And so excited to bring her on. I think she's going to fit well. And then Amy Chestnut is newer to our church, but has been here for almost 2 years or so now and feels called to ministry. He's done ministry before, lived in Africa for a year. So if you ever want an interesting conversation with Amy, she lived in Africa for a year, and her dad's a pastor. So she grew up in the world of ministry. So, but she's coming on board. We had an interview with her in regards to preschool ministry. And then, out of that, there's a little God story there that the Lord just kind of was like, well, we knew we were looking potentially for somebody with senior adults. And I was like, well, why not Amy? Preschool versus senior adults, is there
Quite the age gap.
But, there's still activity.
Yeah, she'll do great.
So I'm glad to have Amy on the team too. Think she's going to fit well too.
Well, I'm sure she'll be on the podcast eventually because her office is the one being moved into, and it's right across from our studio here.
Are you talking about on the mic or in the hallway?
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we try to lock the door. So I think if she gets on the podcast, it would be because we asked her to be on.
Unlike those that are in the hallway right now that are on the podcast, but not.
I don't know how much you can hear of that or not. You may not be able to hear it all, and you're wondering why we're even talking about
That's
it.
right.
So
something did happen over the holidays that I think happens to a lot of people. And this is about, kind of where faith and life intersect.
So is this the topic that you're going to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Lance brings a topic to the table.
So is this off your rec story?
No, this is completely unrelated.
Okay. Can I ask a rec question?
You can.
Before you jump off train here with that. So journey in everyday life, like walking with Jesus, anything the Lord teach you or show you during your situation with your accident?
Oh yeah. Well, again, I mean, your first reaction when something like that happens is, okay, my day's ruined. Here's something that I wish I didn't have to deal with. But, hopefully your faith kicks in and you understand that we're all imperfect people and accidents happen. And although you had rather it not happen, you treat that other person with respect and, let the process take place. And to simplify matters, just don't be a jerk. And so that's how it was handled. But yeah, wish it had been different.
Yeah, I don't always handle situations that don't go my way or that cause, the day to go differently very well, whether it's something to that extreme or just something simple.
Yeah. So yeah, hopefully I handled that okay and represented Jesus well, but it does kind of relate to the other thing.
All right, go for it. Sorry to interrupt that, but
that's okay. I'm on the east side of town. No, I take that back. I'm on the west side of town. That little area where Little Caesars and Orange Theory and Barbaritos are.
Yes. Yep.
Westway Publix.
Which I want to, okay, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe this shouldn't be too much of a detour.
Can we let him get through this? What are we doing?
But this is real life. And like you've brought up this question before, so I would like Lance to explain to people on the podcast why he is the recreation minister but works out in Orange Theory.
Okay, fair. There are two reasons. One, if I worked out on my own, I would get a certain amount accomplished in that workout, but I don't have the self-discipline to get as much done as I can when I'm coached. And Orange Theory is a group workout time. You sign up for a certain time. You go in, you're working out with other people. It's prescribed and you have a coach telling you what to do. And when you do that, I get more done. That's why it works for me. That's one reason. And the other reason is if you're going to be the recreation minister and work out in your own gym, you're probably going to get approached an awful lot about things.
As you're working out.
Yeah. And so you're probably even going to get less done than you would get done anyway when you're not self-disciplined enough to make it happen for you. So those
Okay, fair enough. So you're on the west side of town.
I'm on the west side of town. I've just gotten through working out. I'm checking my phone. I've gotten back in my car. I'm checking my phone and I'm getting ready. This is a Thursday. So Melanie and I eat lunch together every Thursday because it's my off day, technically. So I'm sitting there checking my phone, and all of a sudden this man knocks on my window. And I roll my window down, and he said, "I'm very sorry to bother you, but I have just learned that my father has passed away, and I need a ride this way." And he points west, like toward Daleville. Can you take me? And so, just to be completely transparent, because that's what we're supposed to be here, this is where your faith and life intersect, and you don't know if you make the right decisions or not. But I just flat didn't believe him. And I just said, here's what I said.
Did you have a check in your spirit, as Brother Aaron Dickinson likes to say?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that I really did, and that's my struggle. I don't know if I had a check in my spirit, or if I've
just didn't want to take him,
or if I've just been jaded enough, to where you don't necessarily believe someone. But I said, well, actually, I'm on my way to meet my wife for lunch, and that's what I'm about to do. The point being, I could have, at that moment, I could have just delayed what I was going to do and did this, but I didn't believe him. I don't know, if he's legit or not. So do I put a stranger in my car, et cetera, et cetera. But I bet everybody goes through that, because I bet they've been approached similarly, probably multiple times. And on one hand, I think, well, you probably made a smart decision. And then on the other hand, I think, well, Scripture says, well, as you do for the least of these, so as you do for me. And I always end up being conflicted in those situations, wondering if I am doing the right thing or not.
How did he respond to you? Was he upset?
He wasn't.
Was it kind of a weird response?
He basically just said, "Okay, thank you very much," and just walked on.
See, I've had about 3 experiences here at the church with I guess it's just being caught outside, either walking into church, where I've had 3 different people ask for a ride somewhere. And each one was very different. So the first one, there was a guy who stopped by the church late one afternoon. It was probably close to 5 o'clock. And he had talked to one of the secretaries, and Chuck came and found me. I think I was like the only one here, and he needed a ride to Enterprise. And at first I was like, I don't know, like, this is like, we don't know this guy. Like, we're going 40 miles. Like, we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into. But all this guy needed was a ride to this hotel in Enterprise. And he was like very adamant. So we take him on this ride, and we found out a lot about him and kind of like his journey of faith. And it was really interesting because he genuinely needed the ride, but there was still something that you just couldn't put your finger on, that you were like, I feel like there's something more here though. But we ended up taking him, and everything was fine. And it was actually a blessing, but there was still like this moment of like, I can't believe we really just did that. Another time we're coming back from, Wired actually. And at this night, so the way we work is for Ridgecrest, we come in through the Welcome Center. And Chase, I think you had already, like, this was your first year out of student ministry. So I don't think, or your second year. And so we get back, and I have my in-laws actually bring pizza for our group that night. And as I'm going in the church, I see a man walking basically from like the IGA, the old IGA, up towards the Welcome Center. And so I noticed him, and I thought to myself, just being honest, hey, let me get in this building as quick as I can so that, he doesn't ask me anything. And I know that was the wrong attitude to have. But then the more I thought about it, the more I realized there's a ton of people in this church right now, and these doors are unlocked. So I probably need to stand out here and talk to him. Well, so I stand out there, and he's like, hey, man, I need a ride up the road, yada, yada. He was very vague, couldn't really explain it. And I just had this weird feeling of, if we don't take him and drop him off somewhere, I don't really know what he may do here at church. You know what I mean? Like you have that feeling of like, there's something off, but I don't think I can like be okay knowing, hey, there's tons of kids here and somebody who could just wander around the church. So we end up taking this guy down the street. He needed to go down this gas station, and he wanted us to go down Montana Street. If you've ever been, I grew up going to Montana Street. Chase went to Montana Street. And so we got to the point, he was in the very back truck bed, and we got to about
He was in the truck bed.
He was in the truck bed. Yeah. Cause we were like, hey, jump in the truck bed, just cause it was a very interesting situation. And so we got down where Montana Street meets 84 or West Main, and we stopped at the gas station. We're like, hey man, this is as far as we can take you. Cause there was just this weird feeling around what had been said to us and so on. So sure enough, we dropped him off, go about our week, whatever. About 3 days later, I'm a mugshots checker. Like I'm on Facebook, like, hey, I wonder if somebody I graduated with is on mugshots.
Big news, Auburn, the mugshot checker.
Hey, don't get on the mugshots because I'm gonna tell everybody I saw you on there.
It's a shepherd
on the
thing.
podcast.
On the podcast. And so sure enough, like 3 days later, this guy is on mugshots for like assault with a deadly weapon. And I call my father-in-law. I'm like, you'll never believe this guy. We took him, and like my father-in-law drove us, whatever. And he was like, no way, no way. So that was my second instance where I'm like, okay, I've seen both sides of the coin. Well, then I had a third instance, and Chase, you went along with this one, where a guy stopped one morning here at church. It's probably about 8:30. You had a meeting with a man. And I come in and I'm like, Chase, there's this guy. He needs a ride. Like, I just need somebody to go with me because he genuinely seemed like he needed a ride. And so we take him, and the guy you were meeting with actually went with us. So I drove, the guy sat with us, and then you and the man you were meeting with sat in the back. And I remember leaving that situation of like, I don't really think he needed a ride. Like this guy, he had some more, some issues, some mental things going on that you could tell, okay, I don't really know if that was the case. So through those situations, I think I've probably become very wary of taking people places just because of the skepticism of those who really need it. You miss because those who really don't need it are the ones that it seems like you encounter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think
A lot of different ways we could go with this. So,
which way you want to go?
let's say what you were going to say first.
I guess I think that a heart of willingness, I think that probably needs to be at the forefront of our response in situations like we're willing. Lance, in this situation, like in Auburn, in those situations, like I think at the end of the day, there's a desire to be willing, but is it wise or is it right is where that you gotta have to decide and decipher and figure that part out. Because I think the pull and I think the struggle that you mentioned, Lance, is the fact of, to me, it's always, okay, how would a Jesus handle this situation? Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, if now Jesus wouldn't take anybody in a car, or anywhere, but hey,
hop on my extra donkey.
But yeah. Jesus also wouldn't have been at his full-time ministry job like we are.
Yeah, but Jesus was also doing a lot more important things than we're doing in our full-time ministry job.
That's my point, is he wouldn't have had to make the same distinction that we did because it would have just been a normal day.
Yeah, that's true. But I think for us, at least, I don't know that our days should be dictated. If there was a need and we had an opportunity to meet the need, I think it would be our desire to willingness to do that. So I guess what I'm saying is Jesus, obviously you think would have met the need, different context, different world, kind of thing. So for me, I don't think I would ever take somebody somewhere by myself. I think that's just the side of wisdom, unless there was just this major piece. And I struggle because I am one that, I am not very good at discerning a situation or a person's story. So I just take I just take their word, and Lee will be like, "What'd you just do?" You know, and I'll say, "Well, I gave him $5 or like, you know," and she's like, "Well, what did they say?" And I'll try to tell them the story, and she's like, "Chase, I don't know if I would have done," you know, not in like, she's just so much better at like listening. I mean, to the point where, you know, her and the kids over Christmas break actually like, or maybe a little bit before then, even like made these little goodie bag things so that when you do encounter somebody that's asking for money, or you're sometimes over there where you're talking about, there's somebody sitting at that stop sign right there in front of Barbaritos, Little Caesars, and it's like, we don't really have, you know, give us whatever. You don't really know their story. You can't really figure that out. Everybody's blowing their horn at you, you know? So it's like, well, we can hand them a little goodie bag with some socks and toothpaste and crackers. And if they're
coming
really,
soon, a My Story gospel tract.
if, that's a good point. If, you know, I just totally lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
That's what Broxton's here for.
But oh goodness. Anyways, we pass those little baggies out now versus, you know, not being able to give them anything. But I had a situation where someone called the church recently. This was crazy. Like, so somebody calls the church recently, and they tell our front desk person that they were thinking about taking their life. And I was the only person here. This happened like right before Christmas. And somehow that got transferred to me. And so I answered the phone, and a guy was like in probably North Alabama somewhere trying to get to Chattanooga, Tennessee. When I answered the phone, he never said anything about taking his life. He needed to get from one place to the next. And he was in like Talladega area or somewhere like that. And I'm like, dude, do you know you called Dothan? And he was like, yes, I've tried all the churches around here and we won't do anything. They won't do anything for me. So I was like, okay, well, what's going on? And he tells me the story. He just got out of prison and he's trying to get back to his family for Christmas in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I'm legitimately thinking through, what can I do to help this guy? I mean, that's just, again, the way my brain works. Not thinking about if I give this man money or to figure it. And well, the thing was like, he needed certain amount for a bus thing, and he only could receive it from some sort of random Cash App thing. And I was like, first off, I don't do that, period. Like, I don't do Venmo. I don't do PayPal. I don't do anything when it comes to like cashless system of purchase, I don't know if that's the right even terminology. Is that the right terminology? What's the right terminology, Broxton?
Digital transfer of money.
Yeah.
Okay. Digital transfer. I don't do any of that stuff. Lee does, but I don't. And so, I was like, tell me what they are. And he told me, and I was like, all right, well, man, I got your number. You called. I know your name. Let me look into this. And as soon as I said, let me look into this, he's like, oh, forget it. And got all uptight and was like, you're not going to help me. You're not going to help me. And he like basically like went on this like just this rant for a few minutes about how nobody helped him and cared for him. And then he hung up on me. And like, legitimately, my desire was to help him, but I couldn't just do it immediately. You know, I didn't have the ability and didn't even know how that stuff worked. I was going to have to research it, talk to somebody and figure it out. And then he just kind of hung up on me. So it was just like, then you realize there was more to that story than there really was. And I was about to help the guy, but it probably wouldn't have been the best thing to do to help the guy. So I guess we'll kind of circle there. And that is, I think it just, again, comes down to, it's okay to be wise, in that. And I definitely wouldn't ever take somebody by myself. I mean, that one situation, I mean, anytime anything's ever happened to me, I'm like, hey, let me go find somebody to ride with me, because you just don't know these days. And I think there's a part that God maybe gave us a brain to be smart about that. But I think the importance is being willing to help somebody, but being wise about that.
And I think to some extent, those who really need the help will be patient in terms of like, if they if that guy, for instance, that called, if that was really the case, and maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but if that was really the case, he would have been okay with you saying, hey, let me check into this and just figure it out, and I'll give you a call back at this time. Like, if that was really the case, somebody who really needs the help is going to be like, okay, that sounds great. Like, I'll wait to hear back from you. But you can kind of discern in the discerning moment of someone who gets a little antsy or irate or more frustrated, I feel like that's kind of your sign, kind of your tell of like, okay, maybe this situation isn't up to par as if it was shared.
Yeah, and there've been plenty of situations where I did, help people. So I don't want it to sound like that's just my default answer.
Don't ask Lance for help.
That's why this one struck me, because it was almost from the moment I looked up and saw, it was almost like, this guy's not telling the truth. And I don't know if that's me being discerning or me just being hungry and just wanting to go eat lunch with my wife. That's
Where
why.
were you going that day?
Where did we go that day? I don't know. That was several Thursdays ago. We're on like a rotation.
Oh, okay.
But that's why I really legit wanted to bring it up on the podcast, because I think everybody goes through that, where they probably do. There's probably some situations where they do help people. There's probably some situations where they just go, no, I don't, this is something not adding up. But do people go away from not helping people and feel the same way I do? Like, did I just mess up? Did I just do the wrong thing? And I don't know that there's a perfect answer to that. But, I thought, well, what if that was somebody that God had placed in my path for me to help and for me to get a blessing from helping? And what if, because of past experiences, what if I just missed out on that? So I was conflicted.
I think I definitely find myself questioning it. I mean, I think that's a natural just response. Like, did I do the right? Either way, if you help the person or if you didn't help the person, I've found myself questioning both sides. And I don't know, maybe one day we get to heaven and there's like this whole kind of moments of where we find out,
like, check box over here.
Yeah.
Yes, over here. Nope, not that time.
Yeah. But I think it just comes down to, again, discerning. And, I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't know what time frame wise is going to be interesting. I don't know if we chase this today or not, but I was reading Job, and, the friends.
There's a lot here. He already asked me about some of this.
Well, this is not that part. There is a lot.
Save that for
question.
another one.
Yeah, that is a whole different podcast question. But the whole reality of like Job's friends, and I'm like, man, Job had some situations where his friends were obviously, cool, but then not cool. And it's like, he was like, I just felt like it was very important to be careful about what I say to people, just in general, not just like talking on a podcast or just like passing, hey, good morning, that kind of thing. But I'm talking about like when we always have people that ask us questions and we just respond. But how much have I like genuinely thought that through and prayed about that? So I guess I'm just going to the point of like knowing how to walk your day without being able to immediately pray about something. Like, how do you know what to do in the decision to make there? Like, can you pray in the morning and say, God, guide my steps today. God, guide my words today. And out of that prayer and just, I guess, walking with the Spirit, feel the peace to know what to do in a situation like this? Or do you think there needs to be a moment where you're like, hey man, hold on, give me just a second. You stop the car and like roll the window up and say, God, do you want me to help this person or not? Or and I guess the question is, am I close enough to God and in tune enough with His Spirit that I can discern what to say, how to respond in the moments?
Yeah, I think that oddly enough, this would be a good transition into part of what I've wanted to talk about for the last however many weeks since we've recorded. And so we're just going to put Rahab on the back burner. I know that was the last thing we mentioned, and I don't even remember the context in which it was mentioned, but Lance, you just had to step out, and Chase basically asked, what we've been talking about is walking in the power of the Spirit, basically enough, or
to discern.
Yeah, so that you can actually discern these things. And so that because I would just say my own inclination in that scenario, if that were to happen, we're going to lunch after this and that happened on the way there, my inclination would be, you know what, it's a Monday. I've got, 30 some things to do because I've missed time last week because the baby's sick again. I mean, I just can't, there's no more time in my day to help somebody. And that's just me being honest. And then you have to, get into, well, am I too busy then? But I would think if we're walking with the Spirit enough, you would automatically feel the peace of the Spirit, one way or another, whichever decision you made. I mean, Brother Ray has told several stories throughout his time here, one a couple of years ago that they were on the way back from Nashville and he had an opportunity and he missed it. And this man was torn up about it for weeks. And so, I mean, that would be an example of he had assurance that he missed his opportunity.
So are you saying if Lance was broken over this to this moment, then you feel like he did the wrong thing?
I mean, maybe not necessarily, but I think you would.
Asking, I'm not.
Yeah, I think you would just know. Because you brought it up.
But I
as
think
good.
Brother Ray made the point of he felt like the Lord told him he missed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I think he actually, as soon as he left the gas station, got on the interstate, it was an immediate, you missed that opportunity.
Right.
And then he followed up by saying, I'm sorry,
He tried to go back.
Give me it. I think he might have. And he said, give me another chance. And to our pastor's credit, the next week we were at Bojangles. I was with him at Bojangles, as he often is. And he had an opportunity in the parking lot, and he didn't miss it that time. But I think just what we're talking about here, like I said, is really walking with the Spirit and being able to discern. Not even there's of course several instances of, do I help this person? But just everything in life. And I think we go through, or at least I do, I go through every day, not just truthfully, not really doing that, not walking with the Spirit enough to know, because I get up and I know that okay, well, I've got to get the baby to daycare and then I've got to get to work and we've got to do these things. And if I'm just being honest, there's really never a lot of time for Spirit-led living like that. And I don't really know why that is. I mean, I've got theories, which is what we could talk about, or we could just keep going on this, but why is it that are we just too distracted? We're too busy. Or is it there is a genuine concern and it's instances like this about safety. So,
well, I think to some extent, more towards kind of Chase's question, which you basically unraveled, is that through your time with the Lord, I feel like he gives you discernment in those moments. Whether we consciously think about it as that or not, I think is the difference. But I do feel like from your time with the Lord, obviously the outflow of that will guide you throughout your day, throughout, whatever the situation may be. Because I don't necessarily, if you were to, for instance, stop, if somebody asks you for a ride and you're in your car, like Lance, your situation, and you were to say, hold on 1 second, you rolled your window up, you just started praying about it. The Lord may not tell you within that next 30 seconds.
That person also might not get in the car.
And that person may also be like, this person is crazy. I'm going to take my chances with the next car down the road. So I really think, yes, there's situations you have to pray about. But personally, I think a lot of your in the moment decisions that you have to make are from an outflow of that time that you spend with the Lord, whether it be the night before or that morning, more so than, hey, give me 30 seconds to pray about this. Because, that is us wanting the Lord work on our time. When we're, hey, let me stop and pray about this, but I need an answer in 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Whereas the Lord may not give you that answer in 30 seconds.
I think that's an interesting thing because it never occurred to me to roll up the window and pray about it for 30 seconds. And that may have been a problem on my part because I think there's a fine line in trying to rationalize something and then maybe trying to over rationalize something. Because going back now, if I really wanted to invest in trying to determine whether this person was being truthful with me, my first thought was, okay, well, I could roll down the window and we could play 20 questions. How'd you wind up here? How do you not know your dad is dead and all those questions and try to figure out, okay, well, then he's got a legitimate thing here, but I didn't even want to go there. I was just like, split determination there. I just don't think he's legit, and I'm going on with my day. And I don't know if that's one of the reasons I went away conflicted, but when I do choose to help someone, I sometimes wonder, did I make the right decision?
Right.
And every time I don't choose to help someone, I always wonder if I made the right decision. And I don't know if there's a formula. I don't think there is.
I think it truly is a rock and a hard place. I mean, you help someone that doesn't need it, you get jaded by it. You help someone that really does need it, and you're like, wow, I need to be on the lookout for the next person that's in the same situation.
And I think that's why I get so conflicted, because I'll never know if he was being truthful or not, because that ship has sailed. But you don't want to make that decision because you have been burned before.
Right.
And that's what I worry about, because there have been, I don't know, many times where I have chosen to help people that I later found out were taking advantage. And you don't want that to carry forward in the decisions you make when people are asking for help later. But I probably would, if I was truthful, say that probably does influence me a little bit.
I'm really interested in the deeper issue of how we hear the voice of God, which we've talked about some on earlier episodes about quiet times and stuff like that. I don't feel like we have time to get into it now, but so like we can kind of just maybe preview. But like I said, I think it really has a lot to do. This is just an instance of which, whether or not you are in tune with the Holy Spirit or not. But I will say, or I guess I'll ask a question to Chase, since Leah is so good at discernment, what do you think it is? Do you think that's just a spiritual gift that Lee has, or do you think she's cultivated that to know and to be able to discern these kinds of things really well?
Probably a little bit of both, but a lot of it comes from a spiritual gift. I think if she did a spiritual gift inventory, that would be top of her gifting in some ways, but also she's a really good listener. So she does a really good job of getting deep with people quickly, which can be good and bad depending on the situations. But I think it's a gift, but out of some of the other stuff that she's good at, it helps her too. But I'm not good at that. So I'm just quickly trying to, a lot of times in situations like this, I'm thinking about what I got to do next. And so I'm let's just give the guy $5 and let's move on, and not kind of really take time to spend time with a person or help them beyond just a little bit here or there. But I think the important thing, it comes back to, you talk about hearing the voice of God and navigating that. It doesn't matter. We all every day face things that we are going to have to discern. And it comes back to God, what are you calling me to? And whether it's saying something or a decision at work. I think it goes, there's so much to this, the depth of every decision we make, from, I don't even know if this might be a little too much, but even just who you're going to lunch with, or where you're going to lunch to, or like what you're doing, like there's so many little things that we decide every single day. And the question is like, is that of the Lord? Like, is that spirit? Like, is that in all of that? Like Auburn, you're saying like, if you out of the overflow of my day, like, and I know some of that's trivial. I mean, I'm about to go to lunch with some guys and we decided on a place to eat because it was a good location. So it wasn't like we just like prayed through that. It was just like, but I guess I'm just getting to the point of like, I think there's more to the working of the Spirit that any of us can ever even probably will ever imagine, but it's there to help us navigate these things that we're facing.
Well, I mean, there are, like the Spirit can work in without you having to ask a question about, where should I go eat today? That doesn't mean, if you don't do that, which I never do, but if you don't do that, that doesn't mean the Holy Spirit can't still work in where you're going to eat today and provide you the opportunities like Lance had. But there are also people that like, and I know that this, I'm not making a joke here, and I mean this as respectfully as possible, but I mean, we're Baptist, and like a lot of time, the discussions about the Spirit get a little bit uncomfortable because the fact that we have been talking about this for 40 minutes is proof of that, I think, because we're not always as comfortable with listening to the Holy Spirit and obeying it in these kinds of instances. And there are people out there that it's not uncommon at all for them to say, okay, Lord, where would you have me go to lunch today so that I can come across somebody that you need me to help? And we don't have time to get into why that is, that we don't often do that. But I mean, I don't know. There's a lot there, like you said.
And I think where my conflict arises the most is when you make a determination, what you're trying to discern is, I think, logically, I think what you're trying to discern is, okay, is this person legitimately telling me the truth? Does this person legitimately need the help that he or she says that he or she needs? And so you think, well, that's a wise way to go about it. And then I think about how much grace has been extended to me and to all of us when Christ gets us out of situations that we have put ourselves into, and we're not necessarily deserving of that. And that's what grace is, right? And so where does that play in to the decisions that you make about just acting in grace? And it does. I mean, it can make your head spin a little bit as to whether you're, really responding the way Jesus would respond. And then it goes into what is really helping someone. Is it necessarily meeting a need in the moment, or are there different ways? So I don't know. It could go on and on.
I think an important thing to remember too is that just as we've been acted in grace in different situations, you've also, if you feel you made the wrong decision, or if you didn't help someone and feel like you should have, or something like that, like God is still a God of grace looking down, and you have an opportunity to navigate through that differently in the days ahead. As our pastors preached on, we begin the new year, the ability to let go of what's behind us and move forward in what's ahead, and use that as a learning. So I think it's easy to get caught up as we make decisions that we feel like was not the right decision, that God still is looking down with love and grace to us and ask him for the strength to make the right decisions moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's key, especially like for your situation, Lance, is, the next person you have that ask you that, oftentimes when you're in situations where you feel like, did I make the right choice? Did I not? Sometimes that second person you help no matter what. And sometimes that person that needs that help really doesn't need that help. And then it just affects you even more, moving forward. So I think that's the hard thing for anybody who helps anyone or feels like they miss helping someone is oftentimes you instantly say yes to that next situation, and it just affects you even more than the first situation.
It's funny you should say that because the very next opportunity I had, I did help somebody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, we don't have to go into that whole story, but I did. And I think I made the right decision there, but you don't know 100%. But yeah, that's funny you should say that.
All right. Good conversation. Anything else? Anybody wants to add?
No, I think it's just maybe a good, as you mentioned, some of the stuff you said earlier, possible things to continue to move forward in, and thinking about what does it mean to experience the Spirit and be close to the Lord and hear from Him and be obedient to that for the days ahead. And I think that's a key to the journey, that it's important for us all to practically think through every day, as hard of a thing that can be practical as it is.
Yeah. I think to give a little bit of a preview, because I do think it naturally leads into what I wanted to talk about today. And see, even something like this, that like, for 3 weeks, I've been like, we've got to talk about this. And then last night, Lance says, hey, I've got a topic for the podcast tomorrow. Did the Spirit want us to go this direction? Or did He want us to go into my direction? Or is it a setup to go, is it all, it's all connected?
That's why I don't know if you can have a preview. You don't know what the Lord's going to lay on somebody's heart on.
Well, we did
on
preview
Monday morning at 10:30.
We did preview talking about Rahab, and then we didn't do it.
And the Lord diverted it.
Was that, should we have talked about Rahab?
Maybe we should have.
Did we just avoid Rahab?
I guess we'll find out in a few weeks.
I don't know. But
I can tell you this, I'm avoiding Rahab.
I think that means we definitely need to talk about Rahab.
why are you avoiding Rahab?
There's some depth there, man, that I struggle with. Just initially, I'd have to do some. It's kind of like the question I asked you from Job last week.
You want me to read that?
No, I think not in this episode.
Okay. Well, I think what we're hitting around too is that being a Christian is really hard sometimes, because you don't, and it's hard for a lot of reasons. It's hard because living a Spirit-filled or a Spirit-led life is contrary to our flesh. So that's reason number one. But also we have a lot, because it's contrary to our flesh, there's a lot that affects and shapes us that prevents us from living that way. And so then we have all this stuff that is like confusing us about, because there's another side of this that would have said, Lance, help the guy if you want to.
Don't if you don't.
Don't if you don't. Like, it doesn't, like, you didn't lose your salvation because you didn't give the dude a ride. So I mean, you can overanalyze all this.
And that's easy to do. It's just part of what you want to do as a Christian is that you want to impact society in a positive way. And that doesn't necessarily mean you jump at every question that gets asked for help, but it also means that, you want to try to make those right decisions more often than you make the wrong ones. So,
yeah. Okay. Anything else? Good way to close?
No.
We think this was episode 7.
I'm pretty confident.
Okay. We'll find out when I edit it this afternoon. All right. So we've had a few episodes now. So now would be the time to do the typical podcast thing and ask that you go and leave a review on whatever app that you listen to. We would not ask you to lie. If you don't like the journey, then you don't have to say that. But, good reviews are going to help us be more discoverable on podcast platforms of your choice. And so that's part of our mission here on the journey, is to be more discoverable, not for the sake of popularity, but to help people with these kinds of conversations. So whatever podcast app you listen to, go leave us a review, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff.
And the email address?
And the email address is, if you have questions,
topics.
Or topics. We've already had a couple a couple topic suggestions in the comment section on Substack. So you can comment there, or you can email us at thejourney@rbcdothan.org. Send in your suggestions, or I guess, you could just be old fashioned if you see us in the hallway on a Sunday or a Wednesday and you say, hey, I really enjoyed this week's episode, but I think y'all should talk about this instead. If you want us to talk about Rahab, let us know. Because if we get so many,
I'm calling in sick.
I'm sending you an email right now.
if we get so many requests to talk about the Rahab question, then Chase can't avoid it. So do that. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.